I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Jake, and I've been married to Lisa for about 7 years now. We met in college, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty good thing going. She's smart, beautiful, and she used to be pretty sweet. At least, that's what I thought back then. But over the last year or so, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. She'd be irritable for no reason, cancel plans last minute, and sometimes she'd get defensive when I asked her where she was or who she was talking to. At first, I brushed it off as stress from work or just her being bitchy, but deep down I felt like something was wrong. She always had a quick excuse. Oh, I was just on the phone with my sister, or I was talking to a new coworker about a project. But I could see the lie in her eyes. It was the kind of guilt that makes you feel uneasy, like she knew I was suspecting something but was trying to hide it. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept quiet, watching and waiting. That's when I started noticing her phone more often. She'd hide it when I entered the room, and sometimes she'd get these weird texts at odd hours which she'd quickly delete or dismiss. Her behavior was getting more secretive, and I hated feeling like I was walking on eggshells. Then came the small stuff, her perfume changing, her wearing less makeup or dressing different when she knew I'd be home late. I told myself I was imagining it, but it all added up. The last few weeks, she started staying out later, claiming she was working late or meeting with friends, but I caught her in lies more than once. Still, I didn't want to believe she was cheating. I told myself maybe she was just stressed or having some kind of midlife crisis or something. But the feeling in my gut kept gnawing at me, and I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. One night, I decided to come home early from a business trip I had canceled last minute. I forgot to tell her, but I was just tired of being out of town and feeling like I was second-guessing everything. I pulled into the driveway around 4 p.m., which was suspicious because she usually said she was working until at least 6 or 7. I thought that was odd but didn't think much of it until I saw the living room light was on. Usually, she'd be out at the gym or running errands when I got home early, so that alone made me suspicious. I figured I'd surprise her. I got out of the car, took a deep breath, and headed inside. The house was dead silent except for the faint hum of the TV from the living room. I tiptoed through, feeling nervous but trying to keep my composure. I peeked around the corner, and that's when I saw her. Lisa was sitting on the couch, her head thrown back, and next to her I saw someone I didn't recognize. It was a kid, well, not a kid, really. A young guy. Maybe 19 or 20, and he had his hand resting on her thigh. I froze. My heart stopped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, my supposed partner for 7 years, was sitting there with her legs crossed, looking all too comfortable with this young guy. She was giggling, leaning into him, and their faces were way too close. They looked like they were about to kiss. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there, stunned, trying to process what I was seeing. That's when I noticed the way she looked at him, like he was the only thing that mattered. I knew instantly that was more than just a friendly visit. My wife was cheating on me with our neighbor's son, a kid who mows our lawn. The same kid who I had seen 100 times out there, working in the yard, smiling and saying hi. I couldn't believe it. I felt this fiery mix of shock, anger, and heartbreak wash over me all at once. I wanted to run in and confront her right then, but I needed a moment to gather myself. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. My mind was racing. How could she do this? How had I missed all the signs? I felt like I had been played for a fool, betrayed by someone I trusted completely. I tried to keep my composure, but inside I was raging. I kept thinking about everything I'd done for her, working long hours, providing for her, trusting her. And this is how she repaid me, with a kid who's barely out of high school. My stomach clenched every time I thought about her lying to me, deceiving me, sneaking around behind my back, but I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't just ignore this. Not anymore. Not after seeing her like that, so relaxed, so damn comfortable with him. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, trying to figure out what to do, feeling a strange mixture of heartbreak and rage. I'd never been the kind of guy to lose control, but that night, I felt like everything inside me had cracked open. I knew I'd have to face her soon, but I didn't know what I'd say or how I'd even begin to process it all. I just knew this wasn't going to end well. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a stomach full of knots. My mind kept replaying the scene from last night. Her giggling, the way she leaned into him, the look in her eyes. I felt sick just thinking about it. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I hadn't seen what I saw. If I did, I'd be lying to myself and to her. The problem was, I wasn't sure how to approach her without blowing everything up before I even had a plan. I decided I needed to get some space, clear my head. I went out for a walk, trying to sort through what I'd seen and what I should do next. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was hurt, deeply. I'd thought we had something real. I'd given her my trust, and she'd thrown it away for some kid who mows lawns. That thought kept circling in my head. How stupid I'd been, how blind I'd been to all the signs. That afternoon, I started paying close attention to her, her phone, her whereabouts, her excuses. She was acting as if nothing had happened, as if I was just overreacting or imagining things. That made my blood boil even more. She kept calling me paranoid when I asked questions, told me I was crazy for thinking she would cheat. Her words cut deep. She was so dismissive, so dismissively cruel. Acting like I was just some paranoid husband who didn't understand her, but I knew better. I'd seen the truth. Later that evening, I decided I had to make her admit something. I wasn't about to go through my life wondering if I was crazy or not. I planned to confront her that night, but I wanted to do it in a way that would force her to come clean. I set up a little trap. I left my phone out, pretending to go to the basement for a quick project. While I was busy, I used my other phone to text her, just a generic message, nothing suspicious, but I secretly watched her reaction. As expected, she looked nervous, fidgeting, glancing at her phone like she was trying to hide something. That's when I decided enough was enough. I called her out in the middle of the living room. Her face immediately turned pale and she started with her usual excuses. I was just talking to my sister. It's nothing, you're overreacting. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I'd seen her last night with him and I wanted her to be honest. She tried to. Lai said it was a misunderstanding, that she was just talking to him about the lawn or some stupid excuse. But I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what I'd seen. Her reaction was priceless. She got defensive, raised her voice, yelled at me, called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her. She started throwing accusations back at me, saying I was working too much, that I didn't pay enough attention, that I didn't trust her. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that she was cheating on me, with a kid I'd seen out in the yard, a kid who was supposed to be just our neighbor's son but was clearly more than that. She kept trying to deny it, but her voice cracked, and her eyes darted around nervously. I could see she knew she'd been caught, but she was doing her best to act innocent. That was when I felt something inside me snap. I'd spent years building this life, trusting her, believing in us. And now I realized she'd been lying to my face. It was like everything I thought I knew about her had just been shattered. The anger I felt was overwhelming. I wanted to shake her, to yell at her, to tell her she'd ruined everything. But I stayed calm, which was hard, so hard, because inside I was boiling with rage. I knew I couldn't just walk away without consequences. I had to figure out what I was going to do next. I couldn't let this go, not without some kind of payback, so I started planning. I didn't want to just leave her, at least not yet. I wanted her to feel what I felt. I wanted her to realize what she'd done, how much she'd hurt me. I started thinking about the next steps, how to catch her more red-handed, how to get proof, how to make her see that her lies wouldn't last forever. But for now, I was just trying to breathe, trying not to let the anger consume me. I knew I needed to stay cool, but inside I was anything but calm. I had just opened a door that I wasn't sure I could close again, and it left me feeling lost, betrayed, and more alone than I ever thought possible. The following days were a blur of thoughts, anger, and planning. I kept a close eye on her, watching her. Every move, trying to catch her in another lie or slip-up. It was clear she was trying to act normal, but her eyes kept darting around, nervous, like she knew I was onto her. I didn't say much. What was there to say? I was furious, but I also felt a deep ache inside. The trust we built, the life we shared, it all felt like it was crumbling beneath my feet. One thing I did notice was that she was extra defensive, snapping at me over small things, trying to turn the tables. She accused me of spying, of being paranoid, of not trusting her, which was ironic, considering she'd been the one sneaking around. I didn't bother arguing much. Instead, I started gathering evidence. I installed a hidden camera in the living room where I saw them last, just to see what else might happen. I didn't want to be impulsive, but I needed hard proof before I did something I'd regret. Trust me, I wasn't planning to just confront her without something concrete. During those days, she kept up her act of being the perfect wife, cooking dinner, acting sweet, but I saw through it. I saw the cracks in her facade. She was trying to hide her anxiety, trying to act as if everything was fine, but the tension in her body told me she was lying big time. I didn't care about her excuses anymore. I was just waiting until I had proof. I kept my cool on the surface, but inside I was boiling. I couldn't believe I'd been played for a fool all these years. One evening, I decided I'd had enough. I sat her down in the living room and told her I knew. I told her I'd seen her last night, that I had proof, and I wanted her to come clean. Her face twisted into a mixture of anger and defiance. She spat back, "You're crazy. You don't have any proof. You're just overreacting because you're away all the time." But I didn't flinch. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the hidden camera. It showed her sitting there with him, her hand on his thigh, her laughing at his stupid jokes, her leaning in for a kiss. Her eyes widened in shock, and the color drained from her face. Her first reaction was to deny it again. Of course, that's not what it looks like, she said, desperately trying to save her ass, but I wasn't buying it anymore. The evidence was clear, and her own reaction proved she knew she'd been caught. She started crying, but it wasn't the kind of tears that made me feel sorry for her. It was the tears of a guilty person, someone who knew she'd lost everything. She kept trying to say it was a mistake, that she was sorry, that she didn't mean for it to go this far. I told her I didn't want her apologies. I wanted to know why she did it, why she threw everything away for some kid who mows lawns. Her excuse, that I was neglectful, that I worked too much, that she was bored, and that it just happened. She claimed they only kissed once, that it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, but I didn't believe her. No way. If it was just one kiss, then why was she so defensive? Why was she lying through her teeth? I could see right through her act. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak swell inside me. How could she do this to me, to us? I'd given her everything, my time, my love, my trust, and she'd thrown it all away for this kid who was barely old enough to drink. It was like a punch in the gut. That night, I decided I needed to leave the house for a while, clear my head. I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. I needed space to think, to process what to do next. Part of me wanted to tear the house apart, confront her again, demand answers. But I also knew I had to be smart. If I wanted to do something that would really hurt her, I needed to have a clear plan and solid evidence. Sitting there in the dark, I felt more alone than I'd ever been. Betrayal like this cuts deep, and I kept asking myself how everything got so screwed up. How did I let things get to this point? As I sat in that quiet room, staring at my phone and a mountain of unanswered questions, I realized that my world had changed forever. I wasn't just angry, I was devastated. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had been lying to me right under my nose. And the worst part, I didn't even know if I wanted her to come clean or just leave and never look back. I'd never thought I'd be in this situation, but now I was trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces of a broken life, knowing full well that everything I believed in had just been shattered. A few days passed, and I kept my distance, trying to process everything. I stayed with my buddy Mike. He's been through some bad breakups, so I figured he'd understand. Honestly, I wasn't even sure what I was feeling anymore: anger, despair, a weird sense of numbness, all tangled up inside me. Every time I thought about her and that kid, my stomach clenched tight. I kept replaying that moment I caught her, trying to understand how I missed all the signs for so long. Meanwhile, Lisa was acting like nothing had happened. She'd send me texts, trying to act normal, even asking if I wanted to grab dinner or talk. But I knew better. I could see her trying to pretend everything was okay, but I also saw the panic behind her eyes. It was like she was waiting for me to explode or come back and beg her to stay. I finally decided I was done waiting. I needed to confront her face to face. I told her I was coming home that evening. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch, still trying to act like she was innocent. She greeted me with a forced smile and some lame excuse about everything being fine. I didn't buy it. I laid out the evidence, played the recording again, and watched her reaction. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, her face draining of color again. Her first response was to get aggressive, calling me crazy, trying to deny everything. "You're overreacting," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't understand, it was just a stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything, I swear." But her words felt hollow, and I could see her trying to hold herself together. She kept insisting she was sorry, that she loved me, but I was done listening to her excuses. I knew she'd been lying, hiding things, and I was tired of pretending to believe her. I asked her point blank, "Why? Why did you do it? With some kid who mows our lawn?" She looked at me like I'd just slapped her. Her eyes flickered and she hesitated for a long moment. Then she started her usual bullshit, talking about feeling neglected, bored, lonely. She said she never meant for me to find out, that it was a stupid fling, a mistake she'd never do again. But I wasn't buying that either. If it was just a mistake, then why was she so scared to admit it? Why lie for days? The truth was, she'd been planning this, hiding it, and only got caught because I came home early. That night, I felt a strange mixture of rage, sadness, and disappointment. I'd loved her, trusted her, and all along she'd been sneaking around with some kid who probably barely knew what he was doing. I looked at her, and for the first time I saw her differently, like she was a stranger. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. I realized that my entire world was crumbling, and I didn't know if I could put it back together. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw her out, to demand she leave that night. But another part, more cautious, knew I needed to think carefully about what I was going to do next. I wasn't going to make any rash decisions, not yet. I told her to leave, to pack her bags, and that I needed some space. I wasn't sure if I wanted her out forever or if I could ever trust her again, but I knew one thing. I couldn't live like this anymore, pretending everything was okay. As she packed her things, I watched her, trying to keep my cool. Inside, I was a storm of emotions. I kept thinking about all the moments we'd shared, the plans for the future, and how easily she'd thrown it away. Suddenly, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to jump or step back. I'd promised myself I'd be honest with her, but I also knew I had to protect myself. I didn't want to be just another guy who got used and thrown aside. I deserved better. I deserved someone who didn't lie to my face. That night I sat alone in the house, staring at the empty space where she used to sleep. My chest was tight, and I felt more alone than I ever had. I looked at the evidence. I had enough to destroy her if I wanted. But part of me wondered if I should even bother. Was this the kind of person I wanted to rebuild a life with? Or was I better off just cutting ties and starting over? I didn't have answers, only more questions. All I knew was that my entire life had flipped upside down, and I was just trying to survive the fallout. The days after she left were the worst I've ever experienced. The house felt dead, empty in a way that made everything else seem insignificant. I kept replaying everything: the moment I caught her, the lies she told, her crying and trying to pretend she was innocent. Honestly, I hadn't slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with that kid, her smile, her fingers on his arm. It was like a sick movie playing on repeat. I thought about going after her, confronting her again, demanding answers, but part of me knew that I'd already seen the truth clearly enough. I spent most of my time digging through my head, trying to figure out what the hell I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently. Was I too busy with work? Did I ignore her? Or was she just a bad wife all along? Honestly, I'm still not sure. But I do know that I felt betrayed on a level I never thought possible. I'd given her everything, and she'd thrown it away for some kid who's still in high school mentally, if not physically. It felt like my entire world had shattered overnight. One thing I couldn't do was pretend to be okay around my friends and family. I told a few close friends what had happened, and honestly the support was a double-edged sword. They told me I was better off without her, that I deserved someone loyal, but that only made me feel worse. I kept asking myself how I could have missed the signs, how I could have been so blind. It was like I'd been living in a fog, convincing myself everything was fine when it clearly was. I felt angry at her, yes, but also lost, like I'd been played for a fool. The worst part was the emotional roller coaster. One minute I'd be furious, ready to tear her apart in my mind, and the next I'd sink into deep sadness. I'd think about the good times, the future we planned, and I'd wonder if I could ever get past this. Could I forgive her? Could I forget? I didn't think so, not yet. Maybe never. Every time I tried to hold it together, a wave of grief would hit me, and I'd find myself crying in the shower or sitting alone in the dark. I felt stupid for loving someone who could do this to me, but I also knew I had to be practical. I couldn't let myself spiral forever. I needed a plan. I started by making sure I had all the evidence I needed: screenshots of her texts, the recordings from the camera, the pictures I'd taken that day I caught her. I wanted to be ready for whatever came next. I didn't want to be caught off guard again. I also contacted a lawyer just to get my ducks in a row. I wasn't planning to rush into anything yet, but I knew I had to protect myself, especially if she decided to fight for something, like the house or the assets. One night I sat down and wrote her a long message, not to send, just to vent, to get everything out of my head. I told her how deeply she'd hurt me, how betrayed I felt, and how much I hated her for what she'd done. I also told her I wasn't sure if I'd ever forgive her, but I'd need time to figure everything out. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet, and honestly, I didn't know if I ever would be. That message stayed on my phone unsent because I knew showing it to her would only make things worse. At the same time, I started thinking about what I really wanted. I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I had to decide whether I was going to fight for the marriage or walk away. A part of me wanted to try and fix things, to forgive her and move past it, but another part knew that some betrayals cut too deep. I wasn't sure I was strong enough to rebuild trust after what I'd seen and heard. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads with no clear direction, just a lot of pain and confusion. Deep down, I knew this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about respect, honesty, and what kind of person she really was. And honestly, I was starting to realize that maybe I deserved better. Maybe I'd been clinging to a version of us that no longer existed. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who lied, sneaked around, and cared more about a stupid fling than the vows she took. It hurts to admit, but I knew I had to face the truth. This wasn't fixable, not in a way that made me feel safe or loved again. So I started planning my next move, knowing that whatever I chose, my life would never be the same. The final decision didn't come easy. For days, I oscillated between wanting to fight for us and wanting to walk away and never look back. Every time I thought about her, the betrayal burned fresh. But in the end, I realized I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay, that somehow we could fix this mess. Trust, once broken like that, doesn't just mend itself. And honestly, I didn't want to spend my life questioning everything she said or did. One morning I sat her down with all the evidence, everything I'd gathered, everything I'd seen and recorded. I told her I couldn't do this anymore, that I was done pretending, done trying to justify her lies. I told her I was filing for a divorce, that I wanted her out of my life. Her reaction was as cold as I expected. She begged, she cried, she promised she'd change, that she'd stop seeing him. But I knew better. Her words were hollow, just more lies, trying to manipulate her way back into my good graces. I didn't fall for it. I told her I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. I told her I'd been humiliated, broken, and that I deserved better. That I'd given her everything and she'd thrown it all away for some kid who probably didn't even understand what love was. Her face twisted in a mix of anger, frustration, and regret, all of it fake. I could see right through her now. She had nothing but her lies left. So I started packing my things. I didn't want to linger in a house that felt so tainted with betrayal. I wanted out. I wanted distance from her lies, from the pain she caused. As I was packing, I looked around at what used to be our home, our memories, the furniture we picked out together, the little photos on the wall. All of it now just a reminder of what's broken and lost. I felt a strange sense of relief, too. Like I was finally freeing myself from the chains of her deception. When I left, I didn't look back. I knew I'd be better off without her, even though part of me still felt that ache of loss. But I also knew I'd survive something that would change me forever. It's funny, People say that cheating is a betrayal of trust, but for me, it was a betrayal of everything I believed about love and loyalty. It felt like I'd been living a lie and now I had to rebuild from the ground up. Not just my house, but myself. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing. I started therapy, talking through everything I'd been through, trying to make sense of it. I cut out toxic people, people who might have been more help than hindrance, and slowly, I learned to trust myself again. I realized that I was stronger than I thought, that I deserved honesty, respect, and someone who values me. I also learned that sometimes the most painful betrayals teach us the most about who we are and what we really want. Looking back, I don't regret confronting her or catching her in the act. It hurt like hell, but it woke me up. I refuse to accept betrayal as normal or okay. I refuse to live in a lie. Whatever happens next, I know I'll be okay. I've got my dignity, my pride, and a stronger sense of what I won't accept anymore. So to anyone out there who's walking a similar road, I'll say this: trust your gut. Don't ignore the signs. And when the truth comes out, no matter how much it hurts, you're better off facing it head-on than living in denial. Because in the end, you owe it to yourself to be happy and to be with someone who truly cares. No matter how hard it gets, remember that your worth isn't defined by someone else's lies or betrayal. You're stronger than you think, and you will get through it.